Welcome to Colorful Conversations with Courtenay. I am your host, Courtenay Collins. I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Angela Sherwood. She is a local artist out of Eugene, but she's lived in lots of different places. We're going to talk a lot today about her experiences growing up, and again, talking about race, white and black women's relationships, watching her mother in those relationships, and how that informed her relationships and attitudes today. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy for you to be here too. So we're just going to kind of dive right in and just let's go to your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Iowa, and I lived on a farm there. My mom and dad got divorced, and my mom was a recording artist, so she traveled a lot and ended up getting married to a man who lived in Mississippi.
Okay.
So I moved from Iowa on the farm when I was about, I was going into the second grade.
Okay.
So formative years.
Yes.
And we moved to a really small town in Mississippi.
Okay.
And that was interesting. But I think there is probably where I had developed my attitudes towards the world around me, mostly. Because,
that early?
Yeah, as I grew.
Okay, there.
You know, because it was so different.
Okay.
It was culture shock.
Right, I bet.
And then from there we moved to Nashville.
Okay.
And I lived with my mom in Nashville for a little over a year. I became a rebel at that point, and I was.
What age were you about this time?
13.
Okay.
So I was pretty awful. And then I moved with my dad back to Iowa. It was right after Nashville, so whatever summer that would have been, I was 13 going on 14, or maybe I was 14. And shortly thereafter, my brother also moved as soon as he was able to move out of Mississippi, because she did end up going back there, and he's like,
didn't want to go back? Mm-hmm.
No, he had some exceptional challenges.
Okay.
More so because I think he is gay.
Okay.
And small town.
Yes. Mississippi
and gay
did not mix, right? Yeah.
So he's like, I'm gonna get killed. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
So he actually tried to hitchhike with a trucker once.
Oh wow. He
was
wanted
so
out of there that
out.
bad.
Yeah, and he had not come out at this point.
Okay.
But you know, he had some characteristics that pinned him as gay that people
understood.
You know.
Yeah.
If you just met him for 5 minutes, you wouldn't have known.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, good-looking kid, never interested in girls.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to become interested in girls, and
he couldn't even fake it, huh?
I have a funny story, but I really don't want to tell it, because I think that without getting his permission, I won't.
Yeah.
But let's just say it didn't work out.
Yeah.
Even though he tried. And then when you see somebody as you get older going through something like that, that you love them so much, and you see them hurting, I think it made me think a lot more broadly.
I could see that.
A lot of things.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that's the pain, the expense of pain on someone else, but it does probably give you a different perspective of the world, I'm sure.
Yeah, and him too.
Yeah.
So
so in Mississippi, you went to school there?
Yes.
Was it segregated?
No. Well, legally, no.
Okay.
It was interesting because when I moved down there and I started school and I tried to talk to kids, it was so bizarre. They called me Yankee.
Okay.
Which I was like...
All the kids?
White kids.
Yeah. Okay.
And they hated me. The white kids hated me. Not only was I from the north, I was also poor.
Oh, okay.
Very poor. So they had several names for me.
Wow.
And I had no friends for a long time. And finally, I had a couple people that became my friend, but it was kind of like, I don't want to say superficial. It was, we had to pretend a lot because we really cared about people, but we couldn't act like it at risk of actual physical violence to us. And what ended up happening is when I lived in Winona, the only girls that would talk to me were the black girls. And so we were friends at school only.
Yes.
Mostly like in the bathroom and at recess.
Oh,
nowhere
goodness.
else. I was very naive, and I said, you know, can you spend the night at my house?
Right. But they knew because they're from
there.
Yeah.
And I really struggled because I was an outgoing kid.
Right.
I talked all the time. I still talk all the time. And I wanted friends. I wanted to do things, and I just couldn't. It made me sad, but it also made me aware of my environment.
Right.
It made me learn how to learn my audience.
Yes.
And it opened my eyes to how cruel people can be.
Yes.
And what people are capable of.
Yeah.
And
that always sucks, realizing that.
Especially when you're a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one day we were in the bathroom and I was crying because I had had a particularly bad day on the bus.
Okay.
And one of the girls, her name was Mary, and she was one of the black girls that talked to me. And I looked at her and I said, I wish I was black. And she looked at me and she said, don't you ever wish that. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
And she said, you don't know what it's like, really. You know, and so I think that was the beginning of me trying to understand a lot about what other people go through on a daily basis, and that race relations are a huge problem, no matter how much you try to sweep it under the rug. It's there. And to be in the second, third, fourth grade and having to deal with that, that's heavy. You know, I was like, so at home I had to act a certain way. My stepdad was very redneck.
Yes.
In fact, he did construction, and his the man that worked for him, his name was Joe, he called him Master Gene.
Wow.
A lot of the older black people down there called their bosses.
Yes, Master still.
And I was like,
not surprised by that at all.
What?
Yeah.
And they used words very loosely and very openly that I find extremely offensive and uncomfortable. And I'm like, how can you call him that to his, why isn't he getting mad? I just didn't understand it, because back in Iowa, surprisingly, it's pretty diverse culturally.
I always am surprised by that, by Midwest towns, but I don't know why, because I know there was a Midwest migration and a lot of black folks moved to Midwest towns, but it still surprises me.
I think it's because we were close to the University of Iowa.
And that makes sense. Okay.
So many things there. I mean,
that makes a lot of sense.
There's just in the town I lived, it was close to Cedar Rapids. I lived in Fairfax, which is just a small town outside. They had a Czech museum. They built an African American history museum. They built, so they had all these things that were. And my family in Iowa, on my dad's side, they're all Norwegian.
Okay.
And Norwegian people are surprisingly progressive.
Yes. My neighbor and the lady we were talking about is Norwegian. She's like a grandmother to us.
Yep. And even though the town we lived in was a small farm town, which did not have any black people in it, they didn't avoid, they treated everybody like literally exactly the same.
Got you.
And so that's where I was coming from, and then to go down there and to just get shoved into experience.
My goodness.
I was like, what the hell is happening? It's like my
Right.
whole world turned upside down. And then I watched my brother get attacked
Right.
one day by two boys. And so it just, it was really interesting. Then we moved to a town called Baden in Mississippi.
Okay.
And this is where I started middle school. And I got to experience being one of only 6 white people in the entire school.
Aha.
So it was flipped.
Right.
I was the minority at the school now. And I remember one of the other girls coming up. Her name's Valerie. I'll never forget her. I thought she was so beautiful. My God, she's stunning. And she came up to me and she just looks at me. She goes, "Why them white girls not talking to you?" I go, "I'm a Yankee." And she goes, "Oh." She's like, "Well, come on." I'm like, "Okay." And so then, you know, I did have there was one other girl there that, 2 other girls. Mignon was one girl, and she was white, and she was also poor. And she had a horrible family. And she dated black boys. And that was a big no-no. Big no-no.
I can't imagine.
And I just recently got in touch with her again, and just to see how she was doing. And it's just kind of a hopeless situation down there. You know, people feel hopeless.
She's still there?
Yeah, she's
Wow.
still there. Another girl that I became friends with, and her dad and her mom, I think they were all kind of secretly empathetic. Like, if there would have been like an underground railroad, they would have been part of it, right? So they were, you know, I finally had a friend. Okay, I can go to her house, she can come to mine. And, you know, and at school, it was interesting because we started to listen to rap music when, like, Dougie Fresh. It was Dougie Fresh. And we started to do the prep. And but we could only do it at school. We couldn't do it anywhere else. And
wow.
I was getting ready to move to Nashville. And one of the girls, her name's Cassandra, she was like, "What are you going to do when you move to a town that is big and everything's different?" I said, "I have no idea." And I thought, it can't be that different, you know, because growing up, it's still the South. It was so different in Nashville. But it was definitely, it left a lasting impression on me to be in those situations where you're hated because of a war that they lost. Like, I didn't even have anybody in the war, okay? I realized
right.
the war's over.
Right.
And
I don't think they got the memo even today,
lost.
Angela. I don't even think they got the message today.
No.
Oh my God.
No, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it really opened my mind, and I'm, even though it was really hard, I'm glad, because I think I've experienced a lot of wonderful people that I otherwise would not have.
Got you.
And, you know, my mom having to navigate that with, she, you know, as I'd mentioned earlier, had some mental illness. She had learned to adapt to the people that she was around. And so at some points she would act racist.
Understood.
And because it was the only way that she knew
to
how
get
to
along.
survive.
I got it.
Right?
I got
it was a survival thing for her. The man that was taking care of her is a racist redneck white man.
Right.
And so she had to, you know, adapt to that.
To that role.
Yeah. But outside of it,
wow.
and in a way that also taught me,
if
you're in a situation where you have to survive, people do adapt.
Every day.
They will say
to situations you would never think that a person could, but survival, like you said.
It is. It was survival for her.
Yeah.
So.
And what kind of, she's a musician, you said singer.
Yes.
What kind of music?
She was a country music singer-songwriter.
Okay.
Which is what her parents wanted her to do.
Really?
But she,
okay.
When she was off by herself, she'd do a lot of like Janis Joplin and a lot of, she was into a lot of folk music. She liked Gordon Lightfoot and Cat Stevens and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what they wanted her to do. And they were her managers. So
okay. That's what you said, managers. Yeah. Okay.
That's how she ended up.
Were they musical folk, or was this new? Did they just see her talent and said, we can...
I think that.
Okay. They thought they could get something from her talent.
I think so. Yeah. Yes.
Understood.
And it's hard to know for sure because it wasn't discussed a whole lot. But just looking backwards, you see the dynamic that was there, and it was like. In fact, when I started singing, and my grandparents were in the car and they heard me, my mom's like, "No."
She didn't want you to even go there, huh?
No.
Wow.
Like, no, she is not. And I was like,
wow.
Oh. But I like it. It's fun. And she's like, no.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So did you feel empathy for her when you heard her speaking in a way that you knew wasn't right or didn't line up to what you were
Excuse me.
in your heart felt about people?
Not at first, no. I thought
you were mad? Or
yes.
Okay.
There were times where I thought she was a horrible person.
Yeah, okay.
And there were times where I had to do things to prevent myself from being, maybe it might not have been that I was going to be physically harmed, but in a child's mind, you are like, I could be.
Right.
I have to protect myself here.
Right.
So I wanted to sing a song in church one day, and the pastor looks at me, and these were his words. He's like, "Why did you pick that song?" I said, I like it. I think it's really good for Christmas. And he goes, "That's a Negro spiritual."
Oh, my.
Spiritual. That's a Negro spiritual. I'm like...
You remember what song?
I think it was... What was it? Oh, gosh. Children go where I send
yes.
them.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And he's like, "We will not be singing that song in church."
Wow.
And I
even in church, boy, Lord.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that was a whole new experience too.
Okay.
I got dropped off at a Southern Baptist church.
I was about to ask what denomination. Southern Baptist. Okay. Yeah.
I had no idea. But I thought people were dying.
I bet.
They were falling on the floor and like sweat and spit flying, and I'm like,
speaking of the tongues
what
and all
the
that.
hell is happening? I am not religious now. I'm actually, I hate religion, but religion has been used to oppress people.
Oh, I agree. It's one of my main things I talk about.
So I'm not religious at all.
Yeah, religion has done some horrible things, and of course has pushed, racist ideology. It's helped that. So of course then churches were segregated. It was white church and black churches.
Yes. And
was it just one and one of each like denomination? Or did you have like several
There were several
Baptist
churches. Okay. There was Southern Baptist, there was the Church of God, which I don't know which one was more.
I was about to say those are pretty pretty much the same.
I thought, oh my God, the rapture's going to happen,
right.
And I'm going to have to get my head cut off.
Wow.
Because I'm definitely, what if I'm starving? I'm going to take the number of the beast. I know. The 4 horsemen are going to come.
Right.
And I'm screwed. I'm not going to get sucked up in there. We were reading these books. How do you do that to small children? How do you scare them?
They do.
Like,
I know.
This God is going to let the devil come
anger right
and cut off your head.
I think Revelation. Thank you. I can't even get it out. See? Probably the most scariest thing to me ever.
That is terrifying.
Growing up, yeah.
And that's all they ever talked about.
Yep.
We couldn't wear jewelry. We couldn't wear pants. We couldn't. But you can roll around on the floor.
Exactly. That's totally
makes
fine.
Total sense to me.
Yes, but fingernail polish, devil.
No.
A demon.
Yes.
Oh my
and black
goodness.
people don't ever talk. And no spirituals like that in our church. Spirituals. I have to say it like that because otherwise it doesn't sound right.
So was there music? Did they play music?
Yes.
What was it?
It was just like a woman on the piano. Oh, come to the church in the vale.
Oh,
and I'm like,
goodness. Got you.
how is this supposed to be inspiring? Because it's just making me want to.
Oh!
Ignore that.
I will.
Just keep going.
Oh, goodness.
So that was my experience from 2nd grade to middle school.
That is a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And it also made me kind of like a very angry teenager.
Got you. So that when the rebellion kind of started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you don't agree with me, then you're an asshole, you know, and I would just, but then I came to a point finally where I started to think about, you know, there are things that people don't know. They don't know that they don't know it. And how can I be mad at somebody if they really don't know what they don't know? So it balanced itself out for a long time. Yeah, it did.
So kind of going back to your mom and her career, you said her parents were her managers, and so did she have any friends that were that she ever came across? It's probably was it segregated concerts and things, shows? Do you know?
The kind of music that she sang, you know, mostly only white people
would go
navigated towards that kind of music. You know, they didn't. It was a lot of like the old country standards, like Hank Williams, Dolly Parton, you know, those kind of songs. And I think if she could have had it her way, she would have been more soulful. She absolutely loved listening to Nell Carter sing.
That's one of my favorite women on earth.
You know, and because of you know how I grew up, I became heavily influenced by anything Afrocentric. I loved it. This is where I had problems with learning about cultural appropriation.
Got you. Understood.
You know, because I just loved it.
You can soak
you
it
know?
out. Yeah.
Like you can't. No, don't braid your hair. And because of all of my friends, and I mean, I had one of the girls on the bus. She let me braid her hair, and I was talking to one of my friends. She's like, a black girl let you touch her hair? And I'm like, is that weird? And they're like, yeah. She's like, I don't let white women touch my hair.
Right.
I'm like, oh, well, I'm honored, I guess. You know, so, you know, that's a whole nother story. But she did not have friends, really. My mom moved around so much. Yeah. And she had so many eccentricities about her that other people couldn't necessarily tolerate.
Understood.
For long periods of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
She was definitely, she was never diagnosed with anything, but just, you know, my brother and I, we became quite educated. I worked in healthcare for a long time. And, you know, she was definitely borderline personality disorder. She was very passive aggressive at times. She was into like witchcraft, like black magic stuff. She was, but she was really smart. And when she was good, she was amazing.
Got you.
And there was one lady that was a neighbor, and she was a black lady, and I was really small. But we were still in Iowa, and they were friends. In fact, when my mom kind of went off the deep end one night, she didn't come home. We were really small, and I was like, "Where's Mom?"
Right.
You know, I was in first grade.
Oh, wow.
And my brother hadn't started school yet.
Okay.
So we were little.
And it's just you two, you and him?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I have a sister and I have 2 other brothers, but they came along later.
Understood.
But
sorry.
She's the one that came over and got us, and she never got mad at my mom or told us. She like, I know a lot of people who would have reported to DHS.
Right.
You know.
Right.
She didn't do any of that.
She didn't do that.
She just knew that my mom was having problems, and she told us, "Your mom's just having a hard time right now, so you can just hang out here with us." And she fed us macaroni and cheese, and
that's amazing.
But that was really her and one other lady. When I was really small, were the only people I remember being friends with my mom.
With your mom. Wow.
Other than that, she didn't have friends. She didn't go out socializing. She didn't have girlfriends that she talked to on the phone.
Got you.
She only had herself and her parents and us. And
man.
Yeah, so it was difficult for her. She had a rough life.
And the stepdad that you speak of, were they married her whole?
They were married. They ended up getting divorced. I was already grown.
Okay.
But you know, he was still friendly to us or whatever. You know, I cared about him. He passed away, but he was, in a way, he was nice, but then in a way, he had these really horrible aspects to his personality.
Right.
So it is what it is, I guess. How do you separate those things out? And, you know, I love this about you, I hate this about you.
Right.
So that's kind of how it was with him. And he didn't really do anything as far as socializing either. They went to the beer joint nearly every night.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I would come home and my little baby brothers, there'd be a note on the playpen, "Went to the beer joint, be home soon." And I'm
oh
like,
my goodness.
"You're breastfeeding. How am I supposed to feed the baby?" You
my
know,
goodness.
kind of
like
thing.
that.
And,
Okay.
and I remember making food. I was 9 or 10. We had no food. We were so poor. Half the time we had the electricity shut off or something. One utility was shut off. And the kids were hungry, and I'm like, "I have bread and pickles and mustard. Here's a sandwich." And that was what we ate.
You do.
I'm like, but I learned how to cook. Yes.
Right, whip up anything.
Out of anything.
Yeah.
You know how when you're
I'm
poor,
about to say, you get resourceful.
People be like, "Oh, there's nothing to eat here," and then I go in the cupboards. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, there is. Look, all this," and they're like, "How did you make all that?" I'm like, "I grew up poor."
Gotcha.
That's how it happened. I grew up poor, and I can make anything out of anything. So, yeah.
So, do you remember your first meaningful relationship with a black woman as an adult?
As an adult. Is it memorable? I don't know, because the thing is, by that point in my life, they were just people to me. It wasn't, "This is my black friend." It was, "This is my friend." And so I had, you know, I worked in the hospital, and there was a lot of black women that worked there, and to this day, I still have several friends that, even though we're far apart, we still talk to each other. And so one of the lab ladies, gosh, we're like friends at work, right? We didn't, but she's like, "You need to come to church with me." And I'm like, "Oh man, I would love to go to church with you." She's like, "You need an infusion." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You know, you hung around with all those black people down in Mississippi. You got to get your infusion of blackness back." I'm like, "Oh my God, you are too funny." And so we were very comfortable joking with each other because we just have very comfortable relationships. And, you know, these are things you would not walk up to a stranger and say, but it was funny. She's just like, "Oh my God, you look so white today." I'm like, What does that mean? She's like, I don't know, you just need to come to my church, I think.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, fine, I'll go to you. But I just navigate through so many different personalities and people very fluidly now, because I have been exposed to and kind of entrenched in certain situations where you had to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And I learned that there's good and bad in everything and everybody. And so I try to look at the person. It sounds really cliche, and people are like, you really don't think that. And I'm like, I know that a lot of people say that they have this ideal where they're really comfortable with everybody. I really am. On a level, like getting to know people personally, being the only white person in the room, being around people that other people don't understand or are afraid of. It never, as an adult, made me uncomfortable in a way that it does a lot of other people that I see.
Yes.
The only time I ever got really, really uncomfortable was I got lost in Chicago one time, and I was in an area that's known for violence, and a police officer was there, and he says, you need to go down this road, and you need to get out of this part of town.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay. And I said, well, I'm lost. This was before I had GPS or anything. Excuse me. He said, yeah, you don't need to be here. I'm driving my minivan. Got my Starbucks.
Right.
Like, oh. So he's like, you shouldn't. And then my brother lives in Kansas City, and he's like, don't get off on this exit. Whatever you do, don't get off on there. And I don't think that has so much to do with race as it does with the fact that it was just the area where there was a lot of violence. Dangerous. In general. Yeah. So that, I think that's the only time that I ever, as an adult, felt fearful. And you know, you always like to say it's not because they're black people. It's because they're gangs. You know, but it makes you analyze
that fear.
Yeah. It's like, if I am in my car and two black men walk up to my car to talk to me, do I feel the same as when two white men walk up to my car and talk to me? Sometimes I don't. And I think a lot of it is subconscious. We get these messages all the time in media where, you know, it gets in. It's like an earworm. And so you always have to be conscientious of that. Right. You need to, that's what we need to fight against, because I think what we're seeing now is the earworms have woken up. Yes. And people feel entitled now. Yes. To say things and do things to people that are not acceptable. Right. They feel like they have carte blanche because these messages that have been lying dormant in our minds are now being sparked. They are. And I'm seeing so many different perspectives on things, and I'm trying to understand all of them and still be conscious of my own thoughts. Yes. Because you don't want to fall down a rabbit hole. And the best way for me to not do that is to keep myself involved with people. Yes. All people. I agree with that. It helps keep that at bay. when I think about groups of people that I've had problems with and how I feel when I'm in situations with, I think the most problems I've ever had are with white men. The only people who have ever assaulted me are white men. The only people who have ever done violence towards me are white men. And I started to do this thing where I was looking up statistics because you get this fear-mongering all the time. And, you know, when 9/11 happened, and that generates a whole new group of people now that we can hate, right? And I said, why are we spending all this money and doing all of these things against terrorists when white men kill more people every year than these terrorists have done in an entire history of the United States? Why aren't you addressing the real problems? Why are you latching on to these thing? This one group. And so people didn't like seeing my posts about that. They're like,
is that just recently that you've started posting?
No, this has been for last several years. And this is where the rebel in me comes
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, yes, 5,000 people were killed and it's terrible. And I know people that were there that were firefighters, and that is a horrible, atrocity.
Of course.
But in the last 5 years, this is how many women have been killed by their domestic partners.
My goodness.
By white men.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not what we're talking about.
No.
I'm talking about it.
We don't talk about that at all. Because it's so funny because that's not seen as violence. Like, they don't want to name that violence. It's so weird. When we talk about violence, we're talking about, like you said, black gangs and brown terrorists. That is, when we say violent, that is what we're talking about.
Yes.
How dare you bring in white terrorists and shoot them ups and all that? Like, no.
Well, and the thing is, this is what really bothered me. It does subconsciously make me feel something.
Yes.
So when I was in that area where and it was like, am I afraid because they're black people? Or am I mean, I had to evaluate that in myself.
And I'm glad you did, because a lot of people do not do that. They just
run
with that feeling. Yeah.
I still don't know the answer. But I do know who has been most violent to me.
Right.
And to my children and to people that I know. I don't know one single person who's been killed by a gang member.
Right. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. That's powerful, Angela. That's powerful.
Yeah. We have to stop lying to ourselves.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
No, we can, this is free.
Yay.
We can cuss.
And lying to each other.
Yeah. And just taking information and not questioning it.
And it's okay to say, it's okay. I want people to have conversations where they can admit what they are really thinking. We're so mean to each other about it.
I agree. And that's why I wanted to do this. And it's like, I didn't do this I don't want to debate. Everyone debates. I don't want to debate. I don't want to sit back, and that is not what I'm interested in. Like we were talking earlier, I like to talk to people, have conversations. We're not always, going to agree, but you have to talk about it, and you have to let people talk about it and make mistakes and maybe say something stupid without jumping on their head. And I see a lot of that, and that's just not me. That can be your thing if you want to call people out or jump. That's great. We need that too.
Yes.
But I think we need this as well. And I'm just not interested in jumping on people for every word they say. And not like I don't make people accountable for their words.
Yes.
But I'm just saying when we're actually trying to understand each other. I'm not gonna just be like, well, what you said red when you meant burgundy. Like just grab on a word and just.
Well, and I have seen people when they have said things and they really didn't mean. I'm going to give you an example. This is what I did.
Okay.
I had, oh gosh, how old was I? I was probably 19 or 20. And I grew up using phrases that are very racist.
Got you.
Not trying to be racist.
Right.
It was like somebody saying that's retarded. You know?
Got you. Understood.
And this is another learning moment for me where I learned words are powerful in certain circumstances, and also it's okay for somebody to make a misstep and say I did not mean that, or I apologize, and I had a friend that had a baby girl. She was so cute. But she was, he was black and something else, I think. But anyway, she was a mixed baby. And we were having dinner, and somebody asked me to get something. And do you know what I said?
What did you say?
I said, "What color am I?"
Oh, wow.
That was a phrase we used a lot growing up as kids in Mississippi.
That was your retort. Yeah.
Oh, God. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
It just occurred to me what that meant.
Right. Got you.
I never
You're
thought
just
about
so used
the
to saying,
of it growing up. What color am I?
Wow.
I was like, and so I looked at my friend, and she's like, rightfully so. I said, I have used that my whole life, and I will never say that again. I am so sorry. And she's like, no harm, no foul. And I felt sick. Yeah. Almost physically ill after those words came out of my mouth. But it kind of woke me up to there are things that we do and say on a daily basis that mean something very different to other people than what it means to us. Right. And when I said that, I just thought, oh, I am a horrible person. Because, I'm not racist. But I said that. That actually came out of my mouth. And, so we all say and do things. And I think we attack each other way too quickly. Yeah. And don't allow it to be a teaching moment. Let those moments happen. Yeah. You know, if that wouldn't have happened, would I have still been using that phrase? I don't know. I mean, but it was definitely a pivotal moment in me thinking before I speak. Because I never want to hurt anybody. Yeah. But I think on the flip side, when you say we should be able to do that, you have to also understand that folks have heard it many times, so we might not want to give you grace, maybe not at that moment, and or you know what I'm saying. So you always kind of have to on that other side, because people always want to be like, why can't you just get over it, or I've been have microaggressions thrown at me for 85 times, and that was the 86th, and I just can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? So there's always that balance, but like you said, but when you're immediately apologetic, you don't try to make excuses for it. You're not saying, oh, that's just what I'm used to. So you got it. And so that's important too, because a lot of people will just say, that's not what I meant, and just totally move on. It was to recognize it and get it and say that I will never say that again. Is good. I never thought about the context of it. Right. You hear it, you repeat it, and it's like, as a kid you hear something and you keep saying it, and then as you get older, it's like, oh, that is a horrible thing, and then so I immediately knew that I said something horrible. Wow. Now, I hope that if I ever do stick my foot in my mouth like that, whomever I'm with we can have a conversation about it. Right. And you may still hate me afterwards, and that's okay. Right. You're allowed, right? Because maybe I deserve it, but we need to think about things like that. Context. I agree. Context is important.
So Eugene, that's where you are now. Yes. How was that? What's the climate? Are you in it's supposed to be a liberal town, right? Eugene. Yeah. And like I told you, I had a goddaughter that went there, and she got her master's in therapy. That program, I went to her graduation, and it was 2 black women out of a cohort of 20 folk, and the rest were white women. I think there were 2 white men. And I was actually surprised to see the other black woman. So I was actually very happy that she had that. Yeah. They had a very hard time, both of them. Really? And it was so funny when I went to the graduation, I heard some of the women speak, and I literally could point out every person she had a problem with just by the way they spoke. It was amazing.
Isn't that funny?
It was amazing. And it was just... yeah, it was the type of white woman that would never see her mistakes, would always make excuses, would always think it was the other person being too sensitive. And like, she had a pretty miserable time. A lot of them gave her a very hard time. Another thing, the program director was a white woman, and she used adjectives to describe every person as they came up. And of course, you know me, I'm listening to every adjective very closely. And the white people are getting smart and intelligent and resourceful. You know what my godchild got? Funny.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is a smart woman. Wow. I mean, you know, got her master's degree, and like, it was so, and I brought that up at the table, and you know, a few of her white girlfriends that come, and they were just like, you're right. I said, I know I'm right. But it was so funny, like it was, and of course, I'm sure to her it's unconscious. If I brought it up to her, she probably wouldn't even think about it. But it was just, they got the action, you know, things that are important and you could be like proud of. And then she got, oh, she's so funny. And you know, she makes us laugh.
This is an instance where I was talking about you don't know what you don't know. The white women who didn't catch on to that, it's because they literally don't know, because they've no. This is where we get into the meaning of privilege. People will say, oh, well, she got her master's degree, so what, you know, what's this complaint about privilege?
Right.
I'm a poor white person. What's this complaint about privilege? Okay, I have been a poor white person. I will probably be a poor white person my whole life until I'm dead.
Right.
I hope so, because that way nobody can shit, okay? I never, as a poor white person, have to worry about getting shot by the police when I get pulled over.
Right.
Okay?
Regardless of your class.
That's
exactly.
privilege.
Right.
That's what it means.
Exactly.
I never have to be concerned about somebody being fearful of my presence.
Right.
That's privilege.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with status financially.
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that. Because some people want to, you know, break it down to just that class. Well, if you just get down to rich or poor, well, no, because then you're just assuming that all black folk are poor, and they're not, and they still experience racism.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah. So to ask you this, so you say people don't know what they know, and I hear that a lot. But I'm going to push back and say, do you think we as humans who are living in this world, and these are educated women, do you think they have a responsibility to know?
Yes,
to try to know?
Be a therapist.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Because, and that's another thing, a lot of black folks, therapy, of course, in our community is already a no-no, but then to go to folk who don't even understand your basic issue of what you're going through in the world is a whole different thing.
So it's like, come back to you.
They need her. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think you could do an entire show on what privilege means.
Oh, I agree with you.
I think that you could do an entire show on stop being pissed off about the Black Lives Matter thing. Okay? It's the name of a movement.
Right.
What do you want them to call it?
Right. That came out of a
right?
17-year-old boy being gunned down
because
by
he's
his
black and
neighbor.
He got shot by.
Right.
Yes. So,
and it didn't matter.
Well,
right.
all lives matter. Of course they
right,
do.
Right. It always has to be the pushback.
You're not getting shot in the street.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. And that's just like obtuse thinking. Like you don't want to get it at this point.
Shut up.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me angry.
And good, but it should. It should make folk angry. It should make folk angry. And like you don't have to walk around mad, channel that anger into something, but you have to be angry first.
Yes. And people who don't listen, and you try to tell them something, and this guy got so mad at me. I didn't for the longest time. I didn't avoid certain people who had been my friend. We grew up and we clearly had ideological differences. I would still talk to them.
Got you.
And then so I'm a political junkie. I'm just going to
Me too. Go ahead. Yeah.
And then when Donald Trump got elected, and I saw the switch, so to speak, get flipped for people to start to say what those
like you were
messages
talking about,
that were stuck in their minds. I could not. And I had written a little essay about if you voted for Donald Trump, okay, first of all, aside from the fact that he probably it was rigged somehow for him to get in there, because seriously, most of the people that I know would never have voted for him. I'm like, I don't know how. Somebody else got it. Every Republican that's been in office in the presidency, it was some kind of
always
in the last. I'm like hanging.
Yeah, that's when we switch over to electoral voting. Forget popular vote. It's the electoral.
Yeah, hanging chads.
They always get the electoral.
There's always
college.
Something.
Yeah.
So when it was paper voting, it was hanging chads, and now it's electronic voting. Russia's messing with our elections.
Right.
You guys have stolen the election every single time. Anyway, that's my point. But I don't even know where I was going with it. Oh, I said you're culpable.
Right.
If you voted for him, all of these things, this woman that got ran over and stuff,
Heather.
You are culpable.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
For having the rights turned back for my gay brothers and sisters.
Jesus.
You're culpable. If violence is done to anybody that I love or anybody that you love because of this, you are culpable. And they're like, no.
And they don't want the responsibility.
Because they were single issue voter.
Right.
I just didn't want abortion anymore.
Right. I just like how he thought about this.
Okay, well, you know what? There will people that are going to do abortions no matter what. So
Exactly.
Single issue voter, don't vote. That's how I feel.
I'm with you 100%, Angela. All right. So we're getting to the end here. Tell us what you do in Eugene and how people can find you on social media.
So I have just recently dived into the world of art. I want to be a self-made woman, if I can.
Yes.
Or try to do things from home.
Amen.
And so I have a page that it's a public page. It's Eugene Amateur Artists.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do is network with other people who are just starting out in art.
Okay.
And provide a place where people can see what they do. We only allow artists to join the page to post things because we don't want it filled up with stuff that isn't art. Right? It's an art page. And then I just recently, and I'm still working on it, started to load some of my things that I'm ready to put out there in the world on it's called finerartworks.com. I can't remember the exact. I just started it like 2 or 3 days ago. Okay. But it's loaded on there. I think it's should be on the bottom of the screen here. And so you can find that there.
Okay.
I don't paint. I draw.
Yeah.
And there's not, most of the things that I've seen are paintings, and I'm not a skilled painter, but I can draw. So I also do commissioned pieces. I've just started a couple of pieces. I did one of my dog, and this young woman has 2 bulldogs who they're her children.
Okay.
She's like, will you do my dogs like that?
Very
I'm like,
nice.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to do those.
So that'll get you some business.
Yeah, I
people love their pets.
And everything that I do is it's things that I've seen.
Okay.
And as far as my drawings go, I've also got a fantasy series that it's women in fantasy.
Oh, very nice.
Because there are some powerful women.
Yeah, that
and it's
sounds
very
amazing.
different than my drawings. It's like I'm doing one of Artemis right now, and it's very much fantasy.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that more, because I might want to pick your mission.
I'm a fantasy nerd, and I love to draw, and I love people, and I love to try to capture their, you see a moment in time, and an expression that is indelible.
Yes.
Right? And so you try to put that on paper.
It's amazing.
It doesn't look exactly, it's not like realism, but it captures a moment.
Right.
I always think of the one of my dog. It's called Pepper Pop, and her head's tilted sideways. She's got that dumb dog, like she's trying to understand you. And I think I got it pretty good on there. But those kinds of things. So yeah.
Great.
Yep.
All right, you guys. So find Angela Sherwood on social media. I'll be posting her on my Dirty Angel page. Thank you guys so much for joining us for Colorful Conversations with Courtenay. Again, with my special guest, Angela Sherwood.
Thanks
Thank you
for having
so
me.
much.
I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. Okay.